God bless you, and welcome to another episode of God at Work. And the subject this time, it's trusting at all times. No matter what you're going through, no matter what it might look like in the natural, are you willing and able to trust? That's my subtitle this week. But as I was getting ready to do this program, just this morning, actually, it hit me. Hey, wait a minute. I'm talking about some stuff from a couple of my trips to Colombia. And with the movie The Sound of Freedom out in the theaters right now, that's also about Colombia. So for those of you that have not yet seen the movie The Sound of Freedom, I would like to encourage you to go. And if you can't go, get a ticket and send somebody else to support them. It is truly an amazing movie. It is very, very well done on the life of Tim Ballard and what he's going through with rescuing the children that are involved in the sex slavery that have been abducted and put into slavery, etc. And can't recommend it enough. It was very well done. I will not say enjoy the movie, because that's not the purpose of this movie. It's not one just to go to sit and be entertained, but it will start you thinking, is there anything I can do? Is there more that I could be doing? And I would really encourage you to go. Take a friend, pass it on, whatever you can. And there is a screen here showing the cover for the movie called The Sound of Freedom with Jim Caviezel, who was the same actor that played Jesus in The Passion of Christ. But I would really encourage you to take a chance to go and see it. But in the meantime, we're going to get into this week's program, which is, trusting at all times, no matter what it is. No matter what circumstance you may find yourself in, no matter what threats there are, no matter what's going on around you, trust at all times, and that will give you the peace that you need. But I asked Jerry if he would start with a song called His Eye is on the Sparrow, knowing that no matter where you are, the Lord is watching, and the Lord is there with His eye on you. So His eye is on the sparrow.
Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home, when Jesus is my portion, my constant friend is He. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. So I sing because I'm happy, I sing because I'm free, for His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. Oh, let not your heart be troubled, His tender word I hear, and resting on His goodness, I lose my doubts and fears. Though by the path He leadeth, but one step I may see. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. Yes, His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. So I sing because I'm happy, I sing because I'm free, for His eye is on the sparrow, know He watches his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. So whenever I am tempted, whenever clouds arise, when songs give place to sighing, and when hope within me dies, I draw the closer to him. From care he sets me free. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. Yes, his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he cares for me. So I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. Yes, his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he cares for me. Yes, his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me.
Well, his eye is on the sparrow. And this trip that I'm talking about now, these couple of trips, I needed to know that his eye was on the sparrow, that he was watching, he was with me wherever I was going. Because, it's so important to know that when you go into some of the places that God's taken me and led me, it's so important to know that as it says in Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 8, it says, "And the Lord, he is the one who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you. Do not fear. Do not be dismayed." So knowing that he is the one that goes before makes it so much easier to walk into certain situations. And this trip to Colombia, I was down there, I think it was my second trip down there. And I was in a very tiny little church. Actually, it didn't even have chairs. It had benches, just little benches to sit on, not pews like the fancy ones you see today, just little wooden benches to sit on. And it was sort of on the outside of the city in an area that was a little bit dangerous. And I was speaking, and they'd asked me if I would speak on the feeding program and working with the drug addicts and the homeless and the prostitutes and things like that I was dealing with at the time in the church I was pastoring in Canada. And so I was speaking on that, and there was a couple of guys that came in that were not very friendly looking guys that came in through the back door. And they were standing there in the back door with their arms crossed and this really growly look on their face. I know I just covered my mic, sorry. But anyways, with these growly looks on their face. And they didn't say anything, though, but then they walked off. That's right when I was talking about working with and rescuing prostitutes out of prostitution and working with the addicts and getting them set free from their drug addictions, etc. Well, as most of you know, Colombia is a place that is really known for its drug lords and its the sex trade and all that type of thing down there in that area. So anyways, it was fine. I got through that one okay. But then I was booked to come back down, and I'd been asked if I would do a complete sort of conference on that subject, on helping the drug addicts get set free, working with the prostitutes and getting them out of prostitution, getting them away from their pimps and the ones that were trafficking them and all this type of thing. And I had been asked to come and do a complete 5-day conference on this. And as I was already partway there, when I got a phone call from the pastor, and he said, "Rauna," he said, "I want to let you know, this is what's going on down here." He said, "I am very happy and ready to go through with it, but I want to give you the option and warn you. We have received threats that if we go ahead with this conference, there will be repercussions." It will not be a wise move for you to go ahead, that we were told. And so we wanted to let you know, because you would be right in the middle of it. And so we have arranged everything we can on this end. If you're wanting to come, we have arranged to have everything set in place, to have the top security that we can possibly do, to have everybody ready to go and prepared. Because, they're used to dealing with that type of thing down there. I wasn't, but they were. And I really prayed about it. I said, God, if it's in your hands, I'm willing. If it's what you want, okay. And the scripture that came to me right at that moment was Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10. And it says, fear not, for I am with you. Fear not, for I am with you, the Lord said. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. So I knew that God was saying, it's okay. I'm going with you. I will be there. I'll go before you. I'll be with you. Don't worry. And so I told the pastor, I said, look, I really believe God is saying that I should come, to go ahead with it. And so they had me met security-wise at the airport, told me not to leave a certain area unless the security was there that gave their ID and showed me who they were, that they were there. And they took me to stay at a place. They did not want me staying alone in a hotel. And they took me to a place that was up on a hillside, great big wall, cement wall all around it with security and everything else. And that's where I was taken to stay. And I was told I wasn't allowed outside of the house. There was security in the yard and everything else. And finally, I got out and we were heading down into the town, into Bogota area for one of the meetings. And we're going down this hill. It's a windy, steep hill. And we're heading down this hill. And all of a sudden, there was barricades. And these were not the police. They had barricaded the road. They were blocking it, and they were checking all the cars going by. And the guy that was the driver, he said, do not say a word. My accent when I'm speaking Spanish, it gives me away that I am not Latin. He said, do not say a word. Just sit here. He said, you can be looking at your phone. You can be doing whatever, just to look like you're doing something normal and not worried about them at all, So that's fine. And they let us go through. We get down into the city and head off to some meetings here and there. That happened a couple of times on the road into the city. And then heading into this church where I was doing the conference. And on the very, it was the first night, of the day of 5 days of meetings. It was the first evening. And I'm sitting there on the platform with a couple of the pastors and a couple of the security guards. And all of a sudden, I get up to speak, and the Lord says, I want you just to pray, but watch and pray. Do not close your eyes. Watch what's going on around you. So, okay, I did. I kept my eyes open, and I was watching everything that was happening around. And then I noticed a fellow in the third row from the back slid over to the aisle and started walking forward. And next thing you know, I saw the security guards going over and sort of getting that direction and coming up the aisle behind him. And another crossed over in the middle, and he just kept walking. And he gets up to the front, and I was still praying, and I was able to be at peace because I knew that God had told me that he would be there. He would go before me and told me, don't be afraid. So I wasn't. I can honestly say, with some strange guy walking straight up the front aisle toward me, stands right in front of me, in front of the platform, and the next thing you know, he pulls out a gun. And he said, we have told you these meetings are not to go on. And he was with the rebels that were with the cartels, that were the drug traffickers and all this kind of stuff. He was sent by them to stop the meeting. So the next thing you know, the guys from behind, security from behind, they attacked him from behind, got him down face flat onto a cement floor. He's flat out on the floor. And then they get the gun out of his hand, but you've got one person sitting on his legs, another sitting on one arm, or holding down one arm, another holding down the other arm, and somebody else sitting on his shoulders. I'm looking at is that, why don't they just get the guy out of there? I didn't understand. But the guy that was behind me, he said, just carry on with the meeting. Go ahead. So they were prepared. They knew what they needed to do. And they weren't allowing anything to hinder what God desired to do in that meeting. So I carried on and I gave the first session on how we got started in our work with the homeless, with the addicts, with the prostitutes and everything else. I got started on how we actually got into doing what we were doing. And then I was talking about the numbers of these drug addicts that had been completely set free from their addictions, and how it was statistics that were recognized by the community, that had been stated by the police and everything else. Like the chief of police at a public meeting, he asked me to come, and he introduced me to them as the Reverend. And he says, we as the law enforcement officers of this city, we know which people the Reverend's dealing with and which ones she's not, because we see the difference in their lives. And they gave some statistics, and they had been counting and looking at numbers as well. But over the years, we had over 10,000 drug addicts that were completely set free. That is amazing. And that was, in just over 10 years, over 10,000 drug addicts that had been completely set free. Well, the drug cartel, they don't want people to learn how to take care of this type of thing. That's not something they want on their list. So anyways, the next thing you know, I was still preaching, and I see a whole pile of like the police, military police, gathered around the wall of the meeting room. And they're just standing there on the sides. They've got their weapons all ready and everything else, but they're just standing there on the side of the room, waiting for me to finish. And at the end, I prayed, and then all of a sudden I heard the Lord say, tell them you're just going to sit for a few minutes, and there's going to be a song. And then you're going to come back and pray for people. So I did. I was obedient, and I told them. And I went and sat at the back of the stage. The next thing you know, the police and everybody else were on this guy with their big weapons pointed right at him and everything else. And they're getting him up off the floor, getting his hands in handcuffs first. And then they take him up off the floor and out of there, all handcuffed. He couldn't move if he tried. They had his legs changed. They had his hands changed. He was kind of captive. And then it was time to get back up, and I started praying. And this time I could actually just pray for the people. Gave several words, and people that had been dealing with addictions that wanted to be free, people that were wanting to be able to work and help friends and family that were in addictions. And all these people came forward, and their lives were so completely changed. I don't know how many people that night I prayed for. And that was the last time. And I've heard reports in other trips. Some of them have come up to me in other trips and said, I was one of those ones you prayed for that night. And so at the end of the meeting, I asked the pastor, I said, look, why did they not just get him out of there at the beginning rather than keep him laying on the floor in front of everybody? Why? And he looked at me and he said, because the way they work down here, that guy, he failed at what he was sent to do. And he knew that if he got out of here, his life was going to be over anyways. So it wasn't really worth it to him. It didn't matter whether he took his own life while he was at it. And he says, so often they will have a grenade type or a bomb type thing on them that they will set off, knowing that they failed, and take out as many as they can with them, that would be the best thing that they could do. So they kept him on the floor. They knew what to do. They were prepared. They weren't just floundering in air wondering, what can we do? How can we get out of this? What do we do? They knew exactly what they needed to do. And they kept him on the floor until a safe moment. And all the police were there that they could get over, have him surrounded, and get him out of there without being able to even touch anything else. And it was true. He had a grenade on him that he was ready to set off. With no avail. He was not able to even get near it. So that was fine. That was the first night of the meetings. And then day 2 was uneventful, except coming down that road. Got stopped a few times on that road. And I just carried on with my phone or my notebook and, this type of thing. Ignored everything else going on around me. Had my Spanish Bible on my lap at the time, just so they could see I was speaking Spanish. I was Latin. And carried on. And then I think it was the last night or the second to last night, one of those two. Similar type situation, except this time the guy didn't come from the back down the center. This time came from the side of the platform. And he was going to come up the stairs on the platform. And of course, they stopped him right there. He never got anywhere near coming up the stairs. And again, they got him down onto the floor. And he was held down on the floor. And at the end, the same scenario. In came the police as soon as I finished my meeting, my service, that's my sermon. As soon as I finished, in they came and took him out. Again, he had another grenade on him, ready to set it off and trigger it. And I thought, God, you are so faithful. You know exactly what we need. And Lord, you have said in your word in Colossians chapter 3, verse 15, you have said, and let the peace of God rule in your heart. And no matter what was going on around, even though I knew this guy was very dangerous, I was in complete, total peace because God had told me that he was going before me and I didn't need to fear. So I was able to have peace at that exact time. Even though there's a gun pointed right at my head, that first night, I still had peace. Even though I had a guy trying to come right up on the platform to get to where I was, I still was able to have peace. And there is a song that I've asked Jerry if he will sing, because it's exactly what I needed in that circumstance. It's called Peace in the Midst of a Storm. It's a song written by a very dear friend of ours, Kirk Allen, and it's a song that I love because it said, it's like no matter what you're going through, you can have peace in the midst of that storm. No matter how stormy the situation might seem, you can have peace in the midst of the storm. Jerry?
When you're crying for all the times you've tried, and you're trying to forget the tears you've cried. You've seen so much pain and sorrow, you don't know about tomorrow, but you can have peace in the midst of a storm. Sometimes I feel like I know you feel, and my heart's reaching out for something that I know is real. Then his love comes to me, and it helps my mind to be in peace in the midst of a storm. You can find peace in the midst of a storm, and you can find hope when you just can't go on anymore. Yes, there's love to be found when your whole world's tumbling down. You can find peace in the midst of a storm. Sometimes I feel like I know you feel, and my heart's reaching out for something that I know is real. And then his love comes to me, and it helps my mind to be at peace in the midst of a storm. You can find peace in the midst of a storm, and you can have hope when you just can't go on anymore. Yes, there's love to be found. When your whole world's tumbling down, you can find peace in the midst of a storm. You can find peace in the midst of a storm. And you can have hope when you just can't go on anymore. Yes, there's love to be found. When your whole world's tumbling down, you can find peace in the midst of a storm. You can find peace in the midst of a storm.
Peace in the midst of the storm. And I have to admit, that was a pretty stormy time. That was a circumstance where I had to be able to trust in the Lord at all times, no matter what was going on. I mean, I'd been pre-warned that it was not going to be an easy situation. I was given the choice to pull out if I wanted. And they said, look, we'll understand if you can't make it, if you don't feel you can come. But when you know that God is saying go and do it, your option is to go and be obedient. And that's what I did. I don't recommend walking into circumstances like that if God's not leading you, if he's not guiding you. But when you know he's with you, you have no need to fear. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for the confirmations that you gave me, even before getting on the plane to go, that you would be there with me, that I had no need to fear. And Lord, that whole time there, I knew that I could have peace. Not because of all the security that they were setting up, not because of any of that, but peace because you said I could have peace in the midst of that storm. Because you promised it, Lord. And you promised you would be with me, that you would not abandon me in the midst of it in any way, shape, or form. And Father, I pray right now for each and every person that is going through a dangerous time, a difficult time, a time where it seems pretty stormy to them, but that they will truly be able to trust you, that when you have said, I will be with you, when you have said, I will not abandon you, that you are not a God who will lie. And that if you said, I will be with you, if you have said, do not fear, we don't need to fear. If you have said that you're going before us, we can trust that you are going before us and clearing the way. So, Father, I pray right now for all of those that are going through a difficult time and need to be able to trust you above all else, in no matter what circumstance it is that they're going through, that you will give them the peace that they need. So, Father, have your perfect will, I ask, in the situations that people are going through right now. In your precious name, amen. Amen. Praise God. So if you're going through a difficult time, trust. If you're going through a time that normally you would react in fear, don't forget, fear not. And when he says he's leading and guiding, fear not. Don't worry. He's going with you. Fear not. So if this has touched you and you would like to sow into this ministry so we can carry on doing what we're doing, please feel free. Jerry will put the details up on the screen. God bless you.